The vast council chamber stretched upward into darkness, its crystalline walls shimmering with a soft blue glow. Thousands of alien representatives from across the galaxy sat in curved tiers that rose like waves frozen in time. At the center of it all stood Admiral Tahoe, his white uniform practically gleaming under the chamber's ambient light. The Admiral's chest bore the weight of countless medals, each one representing a world brought under Imperial control. His posture remained rigid as he gestured toward the holographic display floating above the chamber floor, a perfect recreation of Earth, clouds swirling across its blue surface in real time. Supreme Commander Jaiwan studied the projection with golden eyes that seemed to glow from within. Her scaled fingers tapped rhythmically against the polished surface of her command desk. Unlike many in the chamber, she had earned her position through tactical brilliance rather than political maneuvering. As you can see, Tahoe's voice carried effortlessly through the chamber. This world called Earth represents a minimal challenge to our might. Their technology is primitive by our standards. They've barely managed to reach their own moon, and their most advanced weapons rely on crude nuclear fission. A murmur of amusement rippled through the assembled aliens. Several council members exchanged knowing looks. They'd seen this pattern countless times before. Discover a developing world, demonstrate overwhelming force, and add another jewel to the Imperial crown. Intelligence officer Sangmei stood at her station, her uniform darker and more practical than the Admiral's ceremonial attire. She'd spent months studying Earth's transmissions, military movements, and technological progression. Something about the data didn't add up, but getting anyone to listen was proving difficult. "Admiral," she called out, her voice steady despite her growing frustration. "I believe we should exercise more caution in this case. My analysis has revealed several concerning patterns in their military development." Patterns. Counselor Yoongi's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. The elderly alien rose from his seat, his ceremonial robes shifting with patterns of light that mimicked the stars themselves. "Officer Sangmei, while we appreciate your diligence, let us remember our history. The Empire has conquered 1,000 worlds. Each victory has been more decisive than the last." Tahoe nodded in agreement, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Indeed, Counselor. These humans still fight among themselves over resources and territory. Their weapons are crude, their defenses minimal. They don't even have a unified planetary government." Sangmei refused to back down. "That's exactly what concerns me, Admiral. Their military spending seems disconnected from their visible capabilities. And their space program, it's almost as if they're deliberately appearing less advanced than they are." This earned another wave of amused murmurs from the council. Supreme Commander Jaiwan raised a hand for silence, her golden eyes fixed on Sangmei. "Explain your concerns more specifically, officer." "Their satellite network is too basic," Sangmei began, pulling up additional data on a secondary display. "For a species this focused on military development, they should have far more obvious defense systems in orbit. And their response to our probe's test signals, it was too perfect, too carefully crafted." Counselor Yoongi waved his hand dismissively. "You're seeing phantoms where none exist. Admiral Tahoe has led 17 successful planetary conquests. I think he knows how to assess a primitive world's capabilities." Tahoe stepped forward, his voice taking on a more authoritative tone. "I propose we proceed with standard conquest protocols. A fleet of 10,000 ships should be more than sufficient to demonstrate our power and secure their surrender." The council chamber erupted in voices as members began discussing the proposal. Supreme Commander Jaiwan raised her hand again, and silence fell immediately. She studied the rotating image of Earth for several long moments before speaking. "Admiral Tahoe, you will have your fleet. Prepare your forces and proceed according to standard protocols." She turned her gaze to Sangmei. "Officer, you will provide all your analysis data to the Admiral's staff. Perhaps they can ease your concerns." Sangmei bowed slightly, knowing a dismissal when she heard one. As she gathered her materials, she caught sight of Earth's hologram one last time. Something about that peaceful-looking blue sphere sent a chill down her spine. The council session continued as members discussed the logistics of fleet deployment and the eventual integration of Earth into the Empire. Resource assessments were presented, showing the potential value of the planet's vast oceans and diverse biosphere. Through it all, Admiral Taiho stood proudly, already imagining another victory medal joining the collection on his chest. He barely noticed when Sang-Me slipped out of the chamber, her datapad clutched tightly against her uniform. In the corridor outside, Sang-Me began composing a message to her private database. Final observation regarding Earth conquest proposal, she dictated quietly. I fear we're not seeing the full picture. These humans, they're either far less advanced than they appear, or far more. And I'm becoming increasingly convinced it's the latter. She sealed the message with her personal code and sent it to her secure archives. At least when everything was over, no one could say she hadn't tried to warn them. As she walked away, the sounds of the council chamber faded behind her, replaced by the soft hum of the Imperial capital's endless machinery. High above, Earth continued its innocent rotation in the holographic display, giving no hint of what awaited the Imperial fleet. The massive shipyards of Imperialis Prime stretched across thousands of kilometers of space, their skeletal frameworks glowing with construction lights. Warships of various sizes hung in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming under the light of 3 moons. The sight never failed to impress Admiral Taiho, even after decades of service. He stood at the observation deck's edge, hands clasped behind his back, watching as construction drones swarmed around the final warship taking its position in the invasion fleet. Each vessel was a masterpiece of Imperial engineering, equipped with weapons that could reduce continents to ash. Captain He Jun's footsteps echoed across the polished floor as he approached the Admiral. Unlike Taiho's ceremonial white uniform, He Jun wore the practical gray of a fleet officer. He carried a datapad containing the final preparation reports. The numbers are impressive, Admiral, He Jun said, his voice filled with pride. 10,000 warships, each carrying enough firepower to level a major city. The new quantum drives have all passed their final tests. We can reach the Earth system in just under a standard month. Taiho nodded, his eyes still fixed on the fleet. How are the crew preparations coming along? Morale is high. Many of our warriors are excited about adding another world to the Empire. The training simulations show excellent results, though some officers have mentioned the scenarios seem too easy. Easy is good, Taiho replied with a slight smile. Easy means fewer casualties on both sides. These humans will see our power and make the wise choice to surrender. Several decks below, in a quiet corner of the military intelligence section, Officer Sang-Me sat alone in her private chambers. The room's walls displayed endless streams of data about Earth. Television broadcasts, radio signals, satellite movements, and military communications. She spoke quietly to her personal recording device. Final analysis entry regarding Earth invasion preparations. Something continues to bother me about their defense posture. For a species that spends so much on military development, their visible defenses are far too basic. Sang-Me pulled up an image of Earth's orbital space. They have primitive satellites, yes, but where are the defense platforms? Where are the early warning systems? A species this focused on warfare should have obvious defensive installations, but it's as if they're deliberately maintaining a minimal presence in orbit. She rubbed her tired eyes, trying to make sense of the patterns she'd observed. Their military exercises are too perfect, too precisely matched to what we'd expect to see. It's like watching actors perform for an audience rather than actual training. In the shipyards above, Admiral Taiho and Captain He Jun continued their inspection. They walked through a transport tube connecting to one of the flagship's access ports, discussing final details of the invasion plan. The first wave will take position just beyond their moon, Taiho explained. We'll give them a proper demonstration of our power, perhaps destroy one of their smaller cities as a warning. After that, their surrender should come quickly. Hajun made notes on his datapad. And if they resist, then we'll show them why the Empire has never lost a conquest war, but I doubt it will come to that. These humans are divided, fighting among themselves. They'll understand the futility of resistance. Back in her chambers, Sang Mai recorded her final thoughts. I've tried to warn them. The patterns don't match any previous conquest scenario. The humans are either completely defenseless, or their hiding capabilities far beyond what we can detect. Given their history of warfare, I fear it's the latter. Through it all, Admiral Taiho stood proudly, already imagining another victory medal joining the collection on his chest. He barely noticed when Sang Mai slipped out of the chamber, her datapad clutched tightly against her uniform. In the corridor outside, Sang Mai began composing a message to her private database. Final observation regarding Earth conquest proposal, she dictated quietly. I fear we're not seeing the full picture. These humans, they're either far less advanced than they appear, or far more. And I'm becoming increasingly convinced it's the latter. She sealed the message with her personal code and sent it to her secure archives. At least when everything was over, no one could say she hadn't tried to warn them. As she walked away, the sounds of the council chamber faded behind her, replaced by the soft hum of the Imperial capital's endless machinery. High above, Earth continued its innocent rotation in the holographic display, giving no hint of what awaited the Imperial fleet. The massive shipyards of Imperialis Prime stretched across thousands of kilometers of space, their skeletal frameworks glowing with construction lights. Warships of various sizes hung in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming under the light of 3 moons. The sight never failed to impress Admiral Taiho, even after decades of service. He stood at the observation deck's edge, hands clasped behind his back, watching as construction drones swarmed around the final warship taking its position in the invasion fleet. Each vessel was a masterpiece of Imperial engineering, equipped with weapons that could reduce continents to ash. Captain Hejun's footsteps echoed across the polished floor as he approached the Admiral. Unlike Taiho's ceremonial white uniform, Hejun wore the practical gray of a fleet officer. He carried a datapad containing the final preparation reports. The numbers are impressive, Admiral, Hejun said, his voice filled with pride. 10,000 warships, each carrying enough firepower to level a major city. The new quantum drives have all passed their final tests. We can reach the Earth system in just under a standard month. Taiho nodded, his eyes still fixed on the fleet. How are the crew preparations coming along? Morale is high. Many of our warriors are excited about adding another world to the Empire. The training simulations show excellent results, though some officers have mentioned the scenarios seem too easy. Easy is good, Taiho replied with a slight smile. Easy means fewer casualties on both sides. These humans will see our power and make the wise choice to surrender. Several decks below, in a quiet corner of the military intelligence section, Officer Sang Mai sat alone in her private chambers. The room's walls displayed endless streams of data about Earth. Television broadcasts, radio signals, satellite movements, and military communications. She spoke quietly to her personal recording device. Final analysis entry regarding Earth invasion preparations. Something continues to bother me about their defense posture. For a species that spends so much on military development, their visible defenses are far too basic. Sang Mai pulled up an image of Earth's orbital space. They have primitive satellites, yes, but where are the defense platforms? Where are the early warning systems? A species this focused on warfare should have obvious defensive installations, but it's as if they're deliberately maintaining a minimal presence in orbit. She rubbed her tired eyes, trying to make sense of the patterns she'd observed. Their military exercises are too perfect, too precisely matched to what we'd expect to see. It's like watching actors perform for an audience rather than actual training. In the shipyards above, Admiral Taiho and Captain Hejun continued their inspection. They walked through a transport tube connecting to one of the flagship's access ports, discussing final details of the invasion plan. The first wave will take position just beyond their moon, Tahoe explained. We'll give them a proper demonstration of our power, perhaps destroy one of their smaller cities as a warning. After that, their surrender should come quickly. Hajun made notes on his datapad. And if they resist, then we'll show them why the Empire has never lost a conquest war, but I doubt it will come to that. These humans are divided, fighting among themselves. They'll understand the futility of resistance. Back in her chambers, Sang Mai recorded her final thoughts. I've tried to warn them. The patterns don't match any previous conquest scenario. The humans are either completely defenseless, or their hiding capabilities far beyond what we can detect. Given their history of warfare, I fear it's the latter. She sealed the warning with her personal code and sent it to the Central Military Database, knowing it would likely go unread. The invasion plans were already in motion, and no one wanted to hear doubts about what seemed like an easy victory. The next day, as the fleet prepared for departure, Sang Mai watched from her small viewport as the warships began moving into formation. The sight was magnificent. 10,000 vessels arranging themselves with perfect precision, their energy shields creating a subtle rainbow effect against the starfield. Admiral Tahoe's voice echoed through every ship's communication system. Warriors of the Empire, today we begin another glorious conquest. Earth will soon join our mighty civilization, whether through wisdom or force. Set course for the Sol system. One by one, the massive ships activated their quantum drives, disappearing into folded space with flashes of blue light. Sang Mai watched until the last ship vanished, then turned back to her data screens. She had 1 month to try to understand what the humans were hiding. 1 month before the Empire either achieved another easy victory or walked into something far more dangerous than anyone suspected. As the fleet departed, life in the shipyards returned to normal. Workers began preparing for the next construction project, confident that these ships would return victorious like all others before them. No one noticed the small message light blinking in the military database, marking Sang Mai's unread warning about the strange patterns she'd observed. The humans, for their part, continued broadcasting their seemingly primitive signals into space, giving no indication that they had detected the approaching fleet. Their satellites maintained their basic orbits, their military forces conducted their predictable exercises, and their leaders continued their petty political squabbles, all exactly as expected for a species about to join the Empire. Or so it seemed. The vast Imperial fleet materialized at the edge of the Sol system in a cascade of blue light. 10,000 warships emerged from quantum space, their metal hulls gleaming under the distant sun's rays. The formation was perfect, a display of power meant to strike fear into the hearts of those who would soon witness it. On the flagship's bridge, Admiral Tahoe stood before the main viewport, watching as the fleet's sensors began mapping the solar system. The local star's light played across his white uniform, making his conquest medals shimmer. Behind him, crew members worked at their stations with practiced efficiency. Commander Su Jin's fingers danced across her communication console. Her dark uniform contrasted sharply with the bright holographic displays surrounding her station. All ships report successful emergence. Admiral, no damage or anomalies detected. Excellent, Tahoe replied, his eyes fixed on the distant blue dot that was Earth. Begin the standard first contact protocol. Let's show these humans the full majesty of Imperial power. Su Jin nodded and activated the Universal Translator system. The technology was one of the Empire's greatest achievements, capable of converting their message into any known language with perfect accuracy. She adjusted the broadcast settings to maximum power, ensuring their message would reach every communication device on the target planet. Transmission ready, Admiral. Broadcasting on all frequencies. Tahoe straightened his posture and spoke clearly. People of Earth, witness now the might of the Imperial fleet. We bring you an opportunity to join our glorious civilization. Resistance against our power would be futile and unnecessary. Submit to Imperial rule, and you shall be elevated as subjects of the greatest empire the galaxy has ever known. The message went out, carried on waves of energy that crossed the solar system in minutes. On the bridge, officers watched their instruments, waiting for the expected response. Panic, fear, desperate pleas for mercy. They had seen it all before on 1,000 other worlds. Instead, there was silence. No response yet. Admiral Su-Jin reported, checking her instruments again. The message was definitely received. Their communication satellites are active and functioning. Minutes ticked by. The bridge crew grew increasingly uncomfortable with the unusual delay. Previous conquests had always produced immediate reactions, typically a chaotic mix of responses as planetary leaders struggled to form a unified response. Then it came. Every display on the bridge lit up simultaneously. Earth's response arrived on all frequencies, in perfect Imperial standard, and every other known language in the galaxy. It was just one word, repeated over and over. No. Admiral Taiho's confident expression faltered slightly. He had expected begging, negotiations, perhaps even some token resistance. But this calm, unified response was unprecedented. Their confidence is concerning, he said quietly, more to himself than the crew. Then, louder, Commander Su-Jin analyzed that transmission. I want to know everything about its origin and composition. Su-Jin worked quickly, her fingers flying over the controls. Admiral, this is strange. The response came simultaneously from every point on their planet. The signal strength was perfectly calibrated, almost as if. As if what, Commander? As if they knew exactly how to respond to our specific communication systems. An uncomfortable silence fell over the bridge. Captain Hejun stepped forward from his station. Admiral, intelligence officer Sang-Mi's reports mentioned unusual patterns in their behavior. Perhaps we should review them before proceeding. Taiho waved the suggestion away, though a small seed of doubt had taken root in his mind. They're trying to unnerve us with this unified response. A clever psychological tactic, but nothing more. Proceed with the invasion plan. The fleet began its slow advance into the solar system. As they passed the outer planets, sensors continuously scanned for any sign of defensive installations or hidden fleets. They found nothing, just the same primitive satellites and space debris they had detected from afar. Yet something felt wrong. The humans' simple response had carried too much weight, too much certainty. It wasn't the no of a desperate species facing overwhelming odds. It was the no of someone who knew something their opponent didn't. On the bridge, Admiral Taiho maintained his commanding presence, but his mind kept returning to that single-word response. In all his years of conquest, he had never encountered anything quite like this. The humans weren't acting like a species about to be conquered. They were acting like a species waiting for something. As the fleet moved past the gas giants toward the inner solar system, no one noticed that Earth's primitive satellites had slightly adjusted their positions. No one saw the quantum fluctuations that rippled through space, too subtle for even the Empire's advanced sensors to detect. And no one realized that the human's simple no wasn't just a response. It was a warning. 5 kilometers beneath the Pacific Ocean's surface, past layers of rock and advanced shielding materials, Earth's true command center hummed with quiet power. The massive facility, hidden from the world for centuries, stretched for miles in every direction. Its walls were lined with technology that would make the approaching Imperial fleet's weapons look like children's toys. General Min Seo stood at the central command platform, her hands resting on the smooth control surface. Holographic displays surrounded her, showing real-time views of the solar system. The Imperial fleet appeared as thousands of red dots, slowly moving past Mars' orbit. Their formation was impressive, if you didn't know any better. They're so confident, she said softly, watching the fleet's approach, just like all the others we've monitored over the centuries. Colonel Kita approached with a data tablet. His uniform bore no nation's insignia, only the simple emblem of Earth's United Defense Force, an organization whose existence was known to fewer than 1,000 humans. Latest analysis of their fleet composition, General. Their weapons are exactly what our deep space probes predicted. Min-Seo nodded, her eyes never leaving the displays. They still think we're divided, fighting our petty wars, launching our primitive rockets. A slight smile crossed her face. The surface show has worked perfectly. Throughout the command center, hundreds of operators monitored their stations. Each one represented generations of family service, their ancestors having dedicated their lives to preparing for this moment. The quantum defense grid, invisible to even the most advanced alien sensors, had been building power for over 200 years. Defense pattern Omega is fully charged, announced a technician from her station. All nodes report optimal alignment. The grid is ready for activation on your command. Min-Seo watched as another display showed the complex web of quantum entanglement points surrounding Earth. To the Imperial fleet's sensors, they would appear as nothing more than background radiation, if they could detect them at all. Humanity had learned long ago that the best defense was one your enemy couldn't see. Ground stations all report ready, Colonel Kita said, checking another display. The surface militaries are maintaining their exercises, keeping up appearances until the last moment. Deep beneath every major city on Earth, similar command centers waited. The wars that the aliens observed were carefully choreographed performances, designed to maintain the illusion of a divided planet. Every missile launch, every troop movement, every diplomatic crisis, all planned and executed to reinforce humanity's apparent primitive state. Signal from Luna Base, an operator called out. They're in position and powered up. Min-Seo nodded. The moon base, hidden beneath the surface for over a century, was the final component of their defense system. Its quantum resonators would ensure that no Imperial ship could escape once the trap was sprung. It's almost amusing, Kita commented, watching the fleet's approach. Their sensors keep scanning for weapon platforms, defense satellites, anything they would expect to find. They never consider that we might have moved beyond such obvious defenses. The general touched a control, zooming in on the Imperial flagship. They're so certain of their superiority, just like the Centaurians were, and the Proxima Collective before them. Every species that discovered Earth made the same assumption, that visible technology equals actual capability. Around the command center, the quantum grid's power continued to build. Centuries of harvesting zero-point energy had given humanity nearly limitless power, all hidden beneath the facade of a petroleum-based civilization. The Imperial fleet's energy readings, impressive as they were, seemed almost quaint in comparison. Message from Defense Command, an operator announced. All global centers report ready. Awaiting your command, General. Min-Seo straightened her uniform, a simple design that had remained unchanged for 200 years. Humanity has waited a long time for this moment, not just to defend ourselves, but to show the galaxy that appearance and reality are often very different things. The Imperial fleet crossed another invisible threshold, moving closer to Earth. Their formation was spreading out, preparing for what they thought would be a simple demonstration of power. They had no idea they were arranging themselves perfectly for defense pattern Omega. Signal from deep space monitors, Kite reported. No other alien vessels detected within 50 light-years. The grid will have no unintended targets. Min-Seo nodded, watching the red dots move ever closer. Humanity's greatest achievement wasn't developing this technology. It was having the patience to hide it for so long, waiting for the right moment to reveal ourselves to the galaxy. The command center's lights dimmed slightly as the quantum grid drew more power. On the surface, cities continued their normal activities, their inhabitants unaware of the historic moment about to unfold. The carefully maintained illusion of a divided, primitive Earth was about to serve its final purpose. Let them come closer, Min-Seo said, her voice calm and steady. Just a little closer. Let them think their victory is assured. When they realize the truth, It will be far too late. The Imperial fleet moved past the orbital path of Mars, their sensors still detecting nothing but primitive satellites and space debris. They had no way of knowing that every move they made was being guided by fields and forces their science couldn't even detect. Humanity's long wait was almost over. The Imperial fleet glided past Mars' orbital line with practiced precision, 10,000 ships moving in perfect formation. On the flagship's bridge, Admiral Taiho allowed himself a satisfied smile. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. "Begin the attack formation," he commanded, his voice filled with confidence. "Prepare to demonstrate our power to these primitive." The word died in his throat as space itself began to twist. Around his fleet, reality seemed to fold in ways that shouldn't be possible. Captain Hejun stumbled at his station, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Admiral." Commander Su-jin's voice was filled with panic. Energy readings off the scale. The sensors, they're detecting quantum fluctuations everywhere. Before Taiho could respond, a web of pure energy became visible around his fleet. Each ship was suddenly connected to dozens of points in space by threads of light that hadn't been there seconds ago. The Admiral's military training kicked in, and he began shouting orders. Evasive maneuvers. Raise all shields. Get us out of. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, General Min-seo stood calmly at her command station. The holographic display showed the Imperial fleet trapped in Earth's quantum entanglement web. Each ship was precisely targeted, caught in a network that humanity had spent centuries perfecting. "All nodes report synchronized," Colonel Kite announced. "Pattern Omega is fully charged and locked." Min-seo took a deep breath. This single moment would change the galaxy forever. "Execute," she said simply. The quantum grid activated. Reality itself seemed to hiccup as thousands of years of human scientific advancement unleashed its power. The web of energy surrounding the Imperial fleet flared brilliantly. On the flagship's bridge, Admiral Taiho watched in horror as his ships began to vanish. Not explode, not break apart, simply cease to exist. The quantum entanglement web wasn't destroying his fleet. It was removing it from normal spacetime entirely. Reading total quantum displacement. Someone screamed on the bridge. "We're being..." The voice cut off as the flagship itself began to fade from existence. In his final moment of awareness, Admiral Taiho realized that intelligence officer Sangmei had been right all along. The humans hadn't been primitive, they had been waiting. In Earth's command center, the operators watched in silence as 10,000 red dots vanished from their displays. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted exactly 3.7 seconds. "Quantum grid powering down," reported a technician. "All targets successfully displaced. No debris, no radiation, no residual energy signatures." Min-seo nodded slowly. "Status of the lunar resonators. Operating at optimal levels," Kite responded. The displacement field contained everything perfectly. There won't be any trace of the fleet for the Empire to find. Around the world, other command centers confirmed the same readings. Earth's quantum defense system had performed exactly as designed. The Imperial fleet hadn't been destroyed. It had been shifted into a parallel quantum state, removed from normal spacetime, so cleanly that it might as well have never existed. "Begin power down sequence," Min-seo ordered. "Maintain surveillance of the target area for any anomalies." The command center hummed with activity as operators carried out their tasks. No one cheered or celebrated. This was simply the execution of a plan centuries in the making. Humanity had known this day would come, had prepared for it with patience and dedication spanning generations. "Preparing after-action report," Colonel Kite announced. "All recording systems functioned perfectly. We'll have complete documentation of the encounter." Min-seo studied the now empty space where the Imperial fleet had been. "Send word to the Council. It's time for Phase 2. The quantum grid powered down slowly, its invisible web of energy returning to its dormant state. On the surface, life continued as normal. Cities buzzed with activity, militaries conducted their exercises, and satellites maintained their primitive orbits. But in the space where 10,000 Imperial warships had been, nothing remained. No debris, no energy signatures, not even a disturbance in the solar wind. The most advanced fleet in the known galaxy had simply ceased to exist. Earth's first contact with the Imperial Empire had lasted less than 4 seconds. Its message to the galaxy would last considerably longer. In her private chamber adjacent to the command center, Min Seo recorded a brief entry in the defense log. Operation Omega successful. Time to execution, 3.7 seconds. The Empire now knows we exist. Soon they will learn who we really are. The Imperial Council chamber was deathly quiet as the final transmission played. Supreme Commander Jaewon's golden eyes were wide with disbelief as she watched the footage for the third time. One moment, the fleet existed. The next, nothing. Play it again, she commanded, her voice barely above a whisper. The holographic display flickered, showing the final moments of Admiral Taho's transmission. His confident smile, the beginning of an order, then a look of confusion followed by terror. After that, only static. Counselor Yoongae slumped in his ornate chair, his ceremonial robes no longer shimmering with their usual brilliance. Impossible, he whispered, the word echoing in the silent chamber. They were waiting for us. At her station, intelligence officer Sang Mai accessed her sealed reports with trembling fingers. The warnings she had filed, the patterns she had noticed, all of them now seemed painfully obvious. They were never primitive, she said quietly. We just couldn't see their true face. The council members sat in stunned silence. 10,000 ships, the pride of the Imperial fleet, gone in less than 4 seconds. No debris, no distress signals, no traces of battle. It was as if the fleet had simply been erased from existence. What kind of technology could do this? Jaewon demanded, turning to her scientific advisors. What weapon could remove an entire fleet without leaving any trace? The chief scientist stepped forward, his usual confidence replaced by uncertainty. Commander, we don't even have theories to explain this. The energy readings before we lost contact, they shouldn't be possible. Sang Le stood up, her voice stronger now. Permission to address the council. Jaewon nodded, desperate for any insight. The humans weren't hiding weapons from us, Sang Mai explained, pulling up her analysis. They were hiding their entire civilization. The wars we observed, the primitive satellites, the nuclear weapons, it was all a performance. She displayed images of Earth's military exercises, pointing out patterns that now seemed obvious. Look at their conflicts. Too perfect, too contained. Their space program, deliberately inefficient. They knew we were watching. They've probably known for centuries. The implications sent a chill through the chamber. How many other worlds in the galaxy were hiding similar capabilities? How many other primitive civilizations were simply waiting, watching, preparing? Counselor Yoongae found his voice again. We must prepare for their invasion. They'll come for us next, with power like that. No, Sang Mai interrupted. If they wanted to destroy us, they could have done it already. They chose to eliminate only the invasion fleet. This wasn't just a defense, it was a message. As if confirming her words, every display in the chamber suddenly activated. Earth's quantum transmission reached across the galaxy, bypassing all Imperial security measures, as if they didn't exist. The face that appeared was human, General Min Seo, though the council didn't yet know her name. Her expression was neither triumphant nor threatening. She simply looked patient. We know you received our demonstration, she began, her words perfectly translated into Imperial standard. Now, we would like to talk. As equals. Supreme Commander Jaewon straightened in her chair, trying to maintain some dignity in the face of this unprecedented situation. The Empire does not negotiate with. The Empire, Min Seo interrupted gently, no longer has a choice. Your fleet's fate was merciful compared to what we could have done. We've spent centuries preparing not just for defense, but for peaceful contact. The question is, are you ready to listen? The council chamber erupted in whispered conversations. Centuries of Imperial doctrine, thousands of years of expansion and conquest, all of it called into question by a single demonstration of power they couldn't even comprehend. Sangmai watched the human general's face carefully. There was something in her eyes, not triumph or arrogance, but a deep, patient wisdom, the kind that came from playing a very, very long game. We've been monitoring your civilization for a long time, Min Seo continued. We know your strengths, your weaknesses, your potential. We believe you can be more than conquerors. We're prepared to show you how. Supreme Commander Jaewon looked around the chamber, seeing the fear and uncertainty in her fellow council members' faces. For the first time in Imperial history, they weren't the most advanced civilization in the room. Perhaps, Jaewon said carefully, we should listen to what Earth has to say. The human general nodded slightly, a small smile crossing her face. We thought you might say that. Shall we begin? In that moment, everyone in the council chamber understood that the galaxy would never be the same. The age of Imperial conquest was over. Something new was about to begin, and Earth had been preparing for it all along. The quantum transmission spread across the galaxy like ripples in a cosmic pond. In every Imperial world, on every colonized planet, through every space station and settlement, screens and holographic displays activated simultaneously. The Empire's most sophisticated security measures might as well have been made of paper for all the good they did. General Min Seo's hologram appeared before billions of beings. Her expression was calm, her posture relaxed but commanding. Behind her, a simple image of Earth rotated slowly, looking deceptively peaceful and primitive. People of the Empire, she began, her words perfectly translated into every known language. Today marks a turning point in galactic history. A few minutes ago, we removed an Imperial invasion fleet from existence. We did this not to demonstrate our power, but our restraint. In the Imperial Council chamber, Supreme Commander Jaewon and the other leaders sat in stunned silence. The humans' words carried weight they couldn't ignore, especially with the memory of their vanished fleet still fresh. For centuries, we have watched your civilization, Min Seo continued. We've observed your conquests, your technological advancement, your spread across the stars. We could have stopped you at any time. We chose to wait. Across thousands of worlds, billions of beings held their breath. The Empire had been the dominant force in the galaxy for so long that most couldn't imagine any other way of life. Your fleet's fate was merciful, Min Seo explained, her voice gentle but firm. We could have destroyed your entire empire today. Every ship, every station, every military installation, all could have vanished in seconds. Instead, we chose a different path. She paused, letting the implications sink in. Humanity has spent centuries preparing not for war, but for peace. We've developed our technology not to conquer, but to protect and preserve. We've hidden our true capabilities not out of fear, but out of hope. Hope that when this moment came, you would be ready to listen. In distant Imperial colonies, military commanders watched their readouts in disbelief. Every attempt to block or trace the transmission failed. Earth's technology operated on principles they couldn't even begin to understand. We invite you to join us as equals, Min Seo said, spreading her hands in a universal gesture of openness. Not as conquerors or subjects, but as partners in building a better galaxy. We can show you technologies you've never imagined, sciences that will transform your understanding of reality itself. In the council chamber, Intelligence Officer Sang Mei noticed something remarkable. The human general wasn't reading from any script or prompter. This wasn't a prepared speech. It was a genuine invitation, spoken from the heart. The choice is yours, Min Seo continued. You can cling to your old ways of conquest and dominion, fighting against forces you cannot hope to defeat. Or you can join us in creating something new. A galactic civilization based on cooperation, mutual respect, and shared knowledge. She smiled slightly. We've watched your people's potential for creativity, for growth, for change. We believe you can be more than what you are now. We're prepared to help you achieve that potential. The transmission continued, as Min Seo laid out a vision of the future that made even the most hardened Imperial officials pause. She spoke of technologies that seemed like magic, of scientific principles that challenged everything they thought they knew. Your empire was built on the assumption that advancement must be measured in weapons and conquests, she said. We offer you a different measure, the ability to transform reality itself, to explore dimensions beyond space and time, to truly understand your place in the cosmos. In the silence that followed her words, the galaxy held its breath. Centuries of Imperial doctrine, thousands of years of conquest and subjugation, all of it suddenly seemed small and primitive compared to what humanity was offering. The age of empire is over, Min Seo concluded. The age of partnership begins, if you choose to accept it. We await your response. The hologram faded, leaving billions of beings across thousands of worlds in contemplative silence. In the Imperial Council chamber, Supreme Commander Jaiwan looked at her fellow leaders and saw the same realization in their eyes. Their choice wasn't really a choice at all. It was an opportunity they couldn't afford to refuse. A new age of galactic civilization had begun, and humanity, far from being the primitive species they had pretended to be, would be its teachers and guides. The greatest deception in galactic history had not been an act of war, but a patient, centuries-long preparation for peace. Earth had hidden its true face not out of fear, but out of hope for this very moment. The stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter, as if reflecting the promise of what was to come.